unceded territory of the Algonquin people. And the committee continues its study of support for Indigenous communities through a second wave of COVID-19. With us today by video conference until 12:30 are representatives from three national Indigenous organizations. We have President Natan Obed of Inuit Taparit Kanatami. I promised I'd get that right the next time, but I'm not sure I quite got that, and I apologize. Our regional chief, Marlene Poitras of the Assembly of First Nations Alberta Association, and Vice President and National Spokesperson David Chartrand of the Métis National Council. Now, with that, I invite the witnesses to make their opening statements. We're going to have you speak for 6 minutes. I'll be tough on the time because we want to make sure we get our complete round of questioning in. And Mr. Obed, I have you first on my list. Are you prepared to go ahead now for 6 minutes?
Yes, absolutely.
Please go ahead.
Thank you, and it's great to see everyone. Welcome, everyone. ITK is the national representational organization for approximately 65,000 Inuit in Canada, the majority of whom live in Inuit Nunavut, our homeland, which encompasses 51 communities, nearly 1/3 of Canada's landmass, and over 50% of the coastline. Our four regions are defined by our land claim agreements: the Inuvialuit region in the Northwest Territories, Nunavut and Nunavut-Tungavik in the jurisdiction now of Nunavik in Quebec, in the northern part of Quebec, and Nunatsiavut in northern Labrador, in Newfoundland and Labrador. The status of COVID-19 in Inuit Nunavut sits in stark contrast with the situation seen in the rest of Canada. To date, there have only been approximately 30 confirmed cases of COVID-19 detected within our 51 communities, the majority of which have been related to travel, with very little community spread after the initial diagnosis. It's been tough to implement measures like 2-week quarantines in the South for some jurisdictions, and also then the change in lifestyle within communities around social distancing. But to date, we have been very successful in ensuring that our communities are not overrun with COVID-19. Prior to COVID-19, we've experienced greater adverse socioeconomic conditions. We also have had up to 300 times the rate of tuberculosis, depending upon region, in our communities. So respiratory disease and viruses have played a very significant role in the way in which public health has functioned in our homeland. And therefore, we knew right away how difficult this might be and took the appropriate measures. The federal government has helped within the response to COVID-19, and approximately $90 million of federal Inuit-specific funding through 2 rounds of Indigenous community support funds and a top-up to the Inuit post-secondary education funding. Those types of supports have really helped Inuit communities and Inuit land claim organizations respond to COVID-19 in a meaningful way. The monies have been spent on things like supporting food programs, getting people out on the land, especially in the summer, the provision of cleaning supplies, in some cases, providing more water, because a lot of our communities are on trucked water, so that people can wash their hands the appropriate amount of times a day and not have to worry about water running out. Home heating, purchase of supplies, including technological devices for education purposes, and also to support families and those children in care, making sure that they can connect through the social distancing requirements of their particular jurisdictions. We also have done a lot in relation to air transportation, and I'm really pleased that the federal government has defined Nunavut air transportation as an essential service. There's a lot that we can do, I think, moving forward on trying to figure out what that means and how to support it fully. But the recognition is there that without air transportation, we don't get testing results on time. we don't get people to medical care, and we don't have fly in, fly out access to food. So we are very fortunate that there has been a response and there have been subsidies because our airline industry has been hit just as hard as in the South. We also have created Inuit-specific communications and making sure that any of the public health messaging that is produced in Inuktitut, our language, and also available in community. We also have taken advantage of the Inuit Child First Initiative, and it's helped families with children ensure that every child gets health, social, and educational services and supports they need during the pandemic. Moving forward, and especially going into this winter, we need to do more on testing, make sure that the gains that we've made in access to testing are sustainable. Things like gene expert testing platforms that have been mobilized in Inuit regions, and ensuring that we have cartridges for them, ensuring that there's funding to ensure that those tests can be administered in Inuit Nunagat. And then also the system to ensure that we can have access to rapid access testing when it becomes available, and that when testing does need to go to the South, that we have a specific stream that those tests can go into and not get lost in provincial or territorial structures as well. We also need more data, and especially outside of Inuit Nunagat, provinces and territories need to fill out the appropriate Inuit-specific data to ensure that we have an understanding of any concerns in relation to COVID-19 in the Inuit population outside of Inuit Nunagat, and we need the federal government to help them. We also need to ensure that as the vaccine plans come together, that Inuit are considered a highly vulnerable population, especially considering our exposure to TB and then our remoteness, and the fact that we need fly-in, fly-out support at all times for our communities. Throughout all of this, we need an Inuit Nunagat approach. We need to do away with the odd, capricious nature of each of the 30 plus federal departments doing their own thing when it comes to Indigenous peoples and programming and terms and conditions, and adopt for Inuit an Inuit Nunagat policy approach so that we are treated the same no matter where we live across Inuit Nunagat. Thank you for the time this morning.
Thank you very much. And our next speaker is Regional Chief Marlene Poitras of the Assembly of First Nations Alberta Association. Please go ahead for 6 minutes.
Thank you all for the invitation to speak with you today. With the rise in cases in COVID-19 across the country, we have seen a rise in cases among our First Nations. And with that, the concern and fear for our people has also risen. In times like these, it is incumbent upon us to not only focus on the crisis at hand, but to look at the steps that brought us to where we are today and to identify the steps we need to take in the future to protect against these situations. As you are all aware, First Nations experience greater health, social, and economic inequities compared to the rest of Canadians, which makes us particularly vulnerable to COVID-19. Our nations face chronic housing shortages, lack of access to drinking water, and poor access to quality health services, as well as many other challenges. The health and well-being of First Nations in Canada has been and continues to be affected by colonial governing structures, inconsistent policy schemes, and underfunded program allocations. Collectively, these systemic issues impact the daily lives of First Nations people, both on and off reserve. Ongoing experiences of racism in the healthcare system exacerbate these issues. First Nations have an inherent and treaty right to health. Our treaties have established our treaty right to health through the obligation of the Crown to provide medicine and protection through the medicine chest clause found in Treaty Number 6. Treaty Number 6 also contains the treaty and pestilence clause, under which the modern context is to be understood for the Crown to provide assistance in times of natural disasters, diseases, and pandemics. These treaties speak to the beginning of First Nations' relationship with the Crown, and it is these relationships that continue to be at the heart of what needs to be worked on. This pandemic has highlighted the inequities in this country and exacerbated existing challenges. It has also shown us where the relationship between First Nations and federal, provincial, and territorial governments require more effort. This is the time when we need to draw on each other's strengths and support one another through transparent and respectful communication and joint decision making. Leaders across the country were forced to respond to the COVID-19 crisis quickly with limited information and make decisions for the well-being of their people rapidly. But too often, First Nations were the last to receive information and were left out of the decision-making process at the federal, provincial, and territorial tables. There is room to be better, and as First Nations, we look to the Crown to support our relationships with the provinces and territories. This is particularly important as we plan for vaccine distribution to ensure that First Nations needs are considered as per the National Advisory Committee on Immunizations recommendations. Throughout the pandemic, First Nations have done much with very little. We have been innovative and creative and stretched our human and economic resources to respond to this threat. However, with the second wave of the pandemic and with the threat of a third in the future, First Nations capacities to respond are dwindling. Had more been done earlier to support our technological infrastructure and human capacity, First Nations would not be as vulnerable to the impacts of COVID-19 as they are now. First Nations continue to rely heavily on the funding provided through Indigenous Services Canada to support the pandemic response. We were pleased to hear of the additional investments announced on Friday, but more will be needed before this pandemic is over. The investments made by the federal government to support all Canadians during the pandemic have been important and necessary. However, I want to emphasize that this unprecedented level of funding has shown us that First Nations have not been a funding priority in the past, even though our people have been living through chronic health and mental health and addiction epidemics for years. Had more meaningful investments been made earlier to address systemic issues and build capacity, our First Nations would not be as vulnerable as they are now. These investments are needed so that First Nations are better prepared for future pandemics and emergencies. First Nations need to be a priority. We have an opportunity to learn from our experiences with the pandemic to date and to be stronger in our response together as we move forward. First Nations need to be afforded equitable opportunities to make it through the next waves of the pandemic with minimal illness and loss of life. As Dr. Tam stated in her recently released report, no one is protected until everyone is protected. Looking into the future, First Nations need to be provided opportunities to be part of the economic recovery and response. Let us not return to normal. Let us work together to provide a better way forward for First Nations and for all Canadians. Hi.
Thank you very much for your presentation. And everyone's right on time on our 6 minutes. And we're on now to the Vice President and National Spokesperson of the Métis National Council, David Chartrand. Please go ahead for 6 minutes, David. You're on mute. You have to unmute.
I said all those kind words for nothing. I said, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to speak. And Latan, of course, very close friend of mine. Great to see you again in Maryland. It's been a while since I saw you. So it's great to hear your opinion and views. Nathan, you'll see me now reading something which I'm not typically used to doing because they're structuring me here. But let me start off again by thanking you for inviting us to speak as the Métis National Council. Again, on the COVID-19 gripping our country, we all know that, and in particular, its impact on the Métis Nation. Since my last appearance, the Métis Nation governments have worked hard to provide support to our citizens, family workers, and businesses as they try to cope with the hard impact of COVID-19. The Government of Canada heard our concerns, which I expressed to you in my last appearance, that some of the key support programs, such as the Canadian Emergency Business Account, was not reaching many of our people. However, after many calls and some push forward, it responded quickly and meaningfully in a partnership with us to adjust the program to allow our Métis Nation governments and capital corporations to deliver a financial lifeline to our entrepreneurs, which we call the Métis Nation SIBA. It's also provided additional support to our governing members to ensure food security, income, and other supports for many of our more vulnerable citizens, including our seniors, students, early learning, and homeless. And just to give you an example, in the spring, Métis government in Manitoba, we delivered over 6,000 hampers to our seniors and vulnerable across the province. And we're already now moving on our second phase. Uh, there's no doubt that the government's Indigenous support programs, in addition to its broader COVID-19 economic response plan, have helped to stave off what truly could have been a devastating and disastrous impact on our communities. At the same time, COVID has had a significant impact on our people even before the onset of the second wave. Métis constitute the largest of Indigenous labor force in Canada, and the data coming out of Canada's labor market survey shows we have lost jobs at a faster rate than other groups. Just for anybody, just in case you forgot, my last brief, there's 400,000, estimated 400,000 Métis in the Métis Nation homeland, Western Canada. We are the largest Indigenous nation in this country. Many of our citizens are employed in the services and construction sectors. Their type of employment does not enable them to work from home. We're also concerned for the future of many of our businesses. Yesterday, Métis government announced 5.5 million because we're in a red zone in Manitoba to help any of our businesses that would potentially find themselves near bankruptcy or closure completely. So we announced 5.5 million to be eligible to all Métis businesses in Manitoba. We know we are a stopgap measure that cannot be relied upon for too long. The COVID crisis has also exposed the particular vulnerability of our citizens and communities, owing to our longstanding exclusion from the federal health supports available to our other Indigenous peoples. While the First Nation Inuit Elk branch of ISK worked with the First Nations Inuit to provide PPE and other forms of medical assistance, the Métis were left out to fend for ourselves. We ordered, as you heard me last time, we ordered a lot of our stuff from China. We are now focused on the need to contain the second wave. We hope that Canada tries to build resiliency with an equitable and sustainable economic recovery plan. The impact that COVID is having on our people will figure out in this plan. We believe an equitable and sustainable economic recovery plan should incorporate the commitments made to us during the 2019 election campaign. Acting on these commitments will serve and stimulate economic activity and resolving long-standing inequities. These include commitments by Canada to close the infrastructure gap in Métis communities by 2030 through investments in critical health infrastructure, such as the Métis Nation health hubs, co-develop distinct-based Indigenous health legislation, which we're in dialogue with Canada right now, to ensure Indigenous control over the development and delivery of services, attain a 5% Indigenous procurement target in federal spending, and establish a major project benefit framework to ensure Métis communities benefit from major projects. I should add that passing federal legislation to implement UNDRIP will greatly assist in helping shape this major project framework. The MNC is engaging with the mining and oil gas and industries and also with the pipelines on UNDRIP, and we are all of like in one mind, working together to support legislation that can ensure our rights are respected and certainly is provided for major projects to continue in this country. So we're meeting with many of the executives of these of the mining sector, the pipeline sector. So we're making very clear from our sector, the Métis Nation, that we work hand in hand together, and that UNDRIP is not a veto. I should also add that the federal government's budget in 2018-19 contains significant allocations for Métis Nation specific programs and services such as housing, early learning, and childcare and post-secondary education over a 10-year period. Now that was essential, a very wise investment because, as you know, all universities, most of post-secondary are shut down, so they're learning from home, and so is our kids. So we've been able to provide supports to them at home. Accelerating the release of the balance of this funding is in a shorter time frame may also help in addressing long-standing needs and provide economic stimulus in our communities. We hope the money would be released in a much broader context and get all of it into our banks so we can make sure that we can put our long-term plans into action. I hope this committee will lend its support to our important work ahead with the government. Again, thank you for the invitation. Thank you for allowing us to be here and speaking. And I hope that all parties that are listening today, and I commend each and every one of you, and I hope you're all safe. But at the same time, you take the time to reflect on where does the Métis Nation sit on your party platform? Where do you sit on ensuring that the Métis government, Métis citizens, who, as I say, are the largest Indigenous nation in this country, are well protected and in part of your platform and part of your policy and part of your think plan. So again, take care and again, be safe, everybody. And Zan, it was a pleasure speaking to you.
And thank you very much to all of our witnesses, right on time. We go to our first round of questioners now. 6 minutes each, Conservative, Liberal, Bloc, NDP. My list shows Kathy McLeod, Pam Demoff, Sylvie Belloubet, and Rachel Blaney. Kathy McLeod, 6 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. And first of all, welcome to the witnesses. I haven't been on this committee for a year, but certainly was here for a number of years prior. So I think I have met everyone that was presenting today, and thank you for that. I am going to start in terms of looking at some of the issues that were identified previously, and in particular, I want to start with the North and then maybe ask the others if there's issues in their communities. The issue of the rapid testing. In the North, we know that there's a lot of transient workers, healthcare in particular, that come in, and I'm very aware of some workers that go in and they're essentially placed in quarantine, but they do have to, as an essential service, take care of patients and do their job. I have examples where they are tested when they come into the community, but the results are 14 days later, so essentially pretty well useless, the results. Now, is that getting better, Mr. Obed? Is it turnaround time? Are workers coming into the community with results already available? Can you speak to the issue of rapid testing of people that are itinerant coming into your communities, and do you have the full capacity that you need?
Thanks for the question. Maybe I'll start with the natural resource sector. In some of the scenarios across Inuit and all residents of jurisdictions, say in Nunavut, haven't been working at the larger mine sites since the outbreak of the pandemic. And it's because there are concerns with remote work camp environment and the possibility of the spread of COVID, and then workers from that mine site bringing that back to communities. These remote camps have, in many cases, created testing parameters, but that are not certified by the Government of Canada certified best practice by the Government of Canada or by jurisdictions. And so there have been false positives, there have been concerns raised around the ability to test, and so the ability to create a safe environment for workers from Inuit Nunagat working in Inuit Nunagat Natural Resource Project. Rapid access testing would help with that scenario greatly. There is only so long that large-scale mining operations can pay for Inuit employees who want to work and are ready to work, but just are not able to work because of the risk associated with these remote camps in relation to the general population. When it comes to essential workers in Inuit Nunagat, and especially in the healthcare field, each jurisdiction has different protocols, and each jurisdiction has very different barriers to getting results of testing. The gene expert really is one of the best ways to get relatively rapid access testing. The cartridges are originally for tuberculosis, but they have been retrofitted to test for COVID-19 as well. But there's a limited amount of cartridges, and there are a limited amount of deployment of these machines, which are quite costly across Inuit Nunagat. So we have pockets of areas where we can get relatively quick results, but for the most part, we're looking between 4 and, as you said, 10 to 14 days, depending upon the scenario, depending upon the time. And this doesn't help when it comes to ensuring that we get real-time response to COVID. But each jurisdiction has done as much as they possibly can to ensure that COVID doesn't spread within communities, and have been very cautious around the interaction between essential workers and, especially in the healthcare field, and citizens in
So, what would you say the capacity is in terms of cartridges per day in the communities that you serve? And what is the cost? And who is bearing those costs right now?
Well, thanks. These scenarios are changing day to day, and it's a U.S. manufacturer that provides this gene expert technology, and then therefore there are some political considerations as well about the availability of these cartridges in Canada, and then the amount of those cartridges that come to Inuit Nunavut. I don't have the figures for you right here today, but I promise that I can get back to the committee on the availability and quantity of these tests. We were very pleased with um, the announcements earlier on for the Spartan Cube and for the advent of rapid access testing that was homegrown here in Canada. And we do look forward to when that technology comes online. We also have been placed relatively in the front of that line by the government of Canada as a priority population for rapid access testing. And that will be a big breakthrough as well.
That brings us to time. Kathy, thanks very much. Pam DeMoff, you have 6 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and I want to thank all of our witnesses for taking the time to come back again today and share your wisdom and knowledge and experience on the ground. It's critical to all of us as we're as we're doing a sort of a second part to our work in where we are and how we come out of this. And one of the things that's really become clear, um, and I want to focus on is mental health and in particular opioid addictions. And as you know, in BC, there were more than 100 illicit drug toxicity deaths per month for the 6 consecutive months from March to August, and more than 175 deaths each month in May, June, and July. BC's highest monthly opioid death toll in June was 181, and it was up from 76. And we know that Indigenous peoples account for a disproportionate number of these deaths, 6 times more likely to die from an overdose than other BC residents. And while this report has focused on BC, we know that this is an issue across the country. So I wondered if I could ask each one of you, what do you feel is the best way for the federal government to deal with these increases in opioid deaths? And I'd also be interested just what your thoughts are on drug decriminalization. So perhaps we could start with President Obed and then move to Regional Chief Quatras, and then last but certainly never least, Mr. Chartrand. So thank you.
Thank you for the question. In relation to opioids, Inuit Nunavut has many challenges when it comes to addictions. And the opioids challenge, though, is not as astute in its particularity as it might be in your jurisdiction of British Columbia. That's not to say that it isn't very, very important, and that the pandemic is changing the way in which people access uh, any number of different drugs.
And if you want to focus on other, like just drug addiction in general, that's fine too.
I think that the biggest challenge is the access to supports and services, mental health services, addiction treatment centers. And the decriminalization is something that goes hand in hand with policy across Inuit Nunavut. We still have dry communities where alcohol isn't permitted. So our relationship with alcohol and drugs is still one that's very different than most other places in the country. And there is a balance of decriminalization, getting stigma and the justice system having records for people for drug offenses that now are having huge impacts on the rest of their lives and ability to live and access work and employment. We don't want to criminalize, we want to help. And I think that's the general attitude for Inuit and Inuit jurisdiction.
Thank you.
Ms. Poitras? You're on mute. Push your mic. Still on mute. Here you go.
Okay. Thank you for your questions. You know, through this pandemic, many First Nations are supporting their people through two pandemics, as there's been an increase in opioid-related deaths. And the pandemic has brought with it many challenges for mental health, as strict public health protocols have led to isolation. So economic impacts have brought many people deeper financial trouble and greater stress. And the anxiety of the pandemic weighs on all of us. I mean, for First Nations, these stresses have been compounded for many people due to pre-existing mental health concerns, often a result of intergenerational trauma. So we rely on our communities and cultural gatherings to bring us strength and resilience, but many of these practices have been discouraged or put on hold. So it'll take time to grieve and heal from this period, and our First Nations and First Nations-led mental health organizations will need resources and supports to lead our healing. And as for the drug decriminalization, First Nations have to be at the table when those decisions are being made, because they are the ones that are dealing with these issues on the ground with very little to no resources and capacity. So thank you.
Well, 30 seconds, Mr. Chartrand.
Wow. Thank you for the question, Pam. It's quite a real open-ended question, because you look at the mental health and situation that we're going through in the opioid and at the same time decriminalization. First of all, there's not enough space. That's a key. There's not a question about it. There's people waiting right now. Sometimes they wait a year or 2 years to find a place to try to deal with the issue. For example, I had one of our people, citizens that got COVID, contact us the other day, and she was in fear and scared. She said, I need to talk to somebody. I need somebody to help me. I'm going crazy here. I don't know what is going to happen. My grandchild was in the house. My husband was there. And did I give it to my grandchild? And if I did, what happens to him? And if something happens to him, I'll never forgive myself, et cetera, right? So, but there is to get somebody to help them is very hard to find right now. One of the positive directions I see Canada going is the federal health legislation, Indigenous health. I think that will give a force the government to react in Parliament, no matter which government's sitting, to give back and actually report on the status of the development. On decriminalization, I think it's a no-brainer. I think if you look at all citizens, no matter what race they are, I think some of these issues now, we look at cannabis, for example, it's a medicinal plant now, and it always was a medicinal plant. But you look at all society, if they just didn't get caught, then they were okay. The record never affected them. But those that got caught, well, they affected, as Natan said, the future and affected them throughout their lives. So again, I think we need desperate investment, and I think this has got to be a good topic for Parliament to really debate and put some energy behind it.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chartrand. Madame Berube, vous avez la parole.
Ms. Bekobe, you have 6 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would first like to thank our witnesses for being here. It's very important for our committee, and I want to thank all those that are helping on the technical side as well, because they're very good at working with us and understanding our needs. Mr. Chartrand, as you know, this is the 150th anniversary of the death of Louis Riel. Do you think that the government should apologize? There hasn't been a statue built to him, and it seems to me that that would be one aspect of reconciliation on Parliament Hill to do so.
I do apologize for that if the question is posed to me, and I do also apologize that my document was not translated in French before it got there. So if somebody can repeat the question, I heard Lou Riel. Is it regarding the recent attempt for pardon exoneration? Is that what the question was posed
Excusez,
on?
j'ai pas
I'm sorry, I didn't get translation on what I said. That should have been translated into English. Thank you. If somebody could just let me know what was being asked. Could someone else who speaks French?
Chair, Mr. Chair, I think we have to get Mr. Cartran onto the interpretation.
Yes, thank you. Because I don't know, I didn't. It was all I couldn't understand it, and I have very
Okay.
French translators here, but I don't have them in my office.
Mr. Chartrand, on the bottom of the screen, there's a little globe, and you select your own language, which would be English in this case,
Oh,
and then you will hear the French translation.
okay.
Okay,
I went
so
in English. I pressed English.
so you should be listening in English and hearing in English what Madame Berube is saying in French. So I'll just add 30 seconds, and Madame Berube, could you just very quickly repeat that, even though it's not quite on our topic, but I'll allow it. Go ahead.
Oui, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you know, today, or rather on November 16th, it will be the 130th anniversary of the death of Louis Well, and the government of Canada has never apologized. Do you think that the government should do so? And second, do you think that the cancellation of the commemoration and the need for a monument on Parliament Hill would be part of reconciliation efforts?
Thank you very much for that question. Let me start off by saying this again. I do apologize for not having it in French. However, let me say this. I think L'Oreal, of course, we're celebrating 150th anniversary here in Manitoba for Riel bringing Manitoba into Confederation and bringing Western Canada along with him. And definitely, we're still pursuing a statue in Parliament. I think he is one of the first premiers of Western Canada, and he should be acknowledged as one of the first ministers of Canada. So, as a founder of part of Canada. So, along with all other great leaders. We have, I said, like, for example, I stand in belief in the Johnny McDonald statue should remain, and I don't know why people are trying to take it down. But from my perspective, he was the first prime minister of this country, and we should respect that. Although there was many hardships on his policies and actions, he still was the first prime minister of Canada. Now, let me go back to Riel. I think if I can say, Mr. Chairman, I was 30 seconds is quite a short time on such a big topic. But clearly, I think there's people right now pushing to have a pardon exoneration. We do not support that. A pardon means he's guilty and he's being forgiven. Exoneration is you're trying to put him back in the place he was. He's gone now. What if you anything Canada wants to do to really respect Riel and show their respect for it, they should deal with what he was fighting for and try to find the Métis' place in Confederation and dealing with the Métis. For example, our land claim. We're negotiating with Canada right now. The Supreme Court decision that came back in 2013. We want to get that land claim settled. We want to get moving forward. That land was stolen from Riel and his people. So these are key things, if I can say again, Madam Bobre, that these are key things for us that would really show reconciliation for the Métis people by honoring his vision and his commitment and what he gave his life for.
Monsieur Chartrand aussi.
Mr. Chartrand, again. You talked about an action plan earlier, and of course, we have the pandemic, and we went through a lot in the first wave. So, did you get a good response from the government to deal with the pandemic?
Let me say this. Canada's response to Métis Nation by the Prime Minister has been excellent. Where the problem is lying is the internal policies of government, and that long-standing policies. And for example, health, the Department of FAC or FINEB, I call them. Sorry, FINEB, First Nation Inuit Health Branch, denies that there's any responsibility they have for Métis, and that's still a standing position that's been in existence now, going on for decade upon decade, government after government, no matter what government's been in power. And so the Métis have been really discriminated and really the negative effect has been causing us the worst healthcare than anybody else in Western Canada. A study's been done showing that the Métis have the highest chronic illnesses and surpassing First Nations in diabetes and other chronic illnesses that really have affected the future of our generation. Even though we're the largest nation in this country, we've been hit the hardest because of policies of Canada. I know we've been in dialogue with Minister Miller to try to get that corrected. I'm waiting till COVID's finished. And I assure you, I'll be coming with two arms flying to get this policy revised in FINIB, that the Métis, because we want Daniels, made it very clear, Supreme Court decision, that we're a federal responsibility and should fall under that parameter. So from our perspective, Canada's done extremely well in economic, education, housing, all of those things. But when it comes to health, there's still a struggling policy there that needs to be revised, and it's going to be important that people take it. Right now, for example, the PPE, all the medical supplies, we weren't included in that. I bought ours from China, and so it wasn't. But again, it wasn't for federal money. I would never been able to do it. But I was not part of the pandemic plan by Canada. As Indigenous people, we're left out because of the policy that's I think is one of the most discriminatory racial policies that exist right now in Canada, and it really hinders and making people feel the effect. And proof is in the pudding, and in the sense of our studies that show we're in a worse healthcare than anybody else. And yet I said they always find us to pay our taxes, no hesitation. They'll find us in the middle of a bush to pay taxes, but they won't find us when it comes to services under the health file. But otherwise, without the support of the Prime Minister and the Métis Nation messages he's given loud and clear, and the message he sent to his ministers, I think we would have been one hell of a mess right now, and I think we'd have seen a lot of debt in the Métis communities. And thank God we got their support from Canada on that aspect of it. So it saved us on that side.
1 minute left.
Mr. Stott.
Mr. Chartrand, in your opinion, what are the resources you would need to deal with the pandemic currently?
Well, from our perspective, I think mental health. You just heard the question from Pam. I think these are key things. Like, for example, if we had a crash in a community, the province doesn't collect our data right now. So if, say, one of our villages had a massive, like Lac-La-Biche did, if anybody did have it here, and it is spread out amongst all the families, we have no nurses, we have no health supports, we have no doctors, we have no place to go to get somebody to come in. The province has no programs for us whatsoever because they say we're a federal jurisdiction. So we have nowhere to turn. If something ever hits us and it spreads like wildfire, we're very big families. We have nowhere to turn. And right now, there is no pandemic plan directly for the Métis people by Canada or the province.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chartrand. And now, Ms. Blaney, you have your 6-minute round. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair, and I thank all the witnesses so much for being here with us today. If I could just start with Regional Chief Poitras, you talked about the second wave and the capacity to respond is dwindling. Could you just tell us a little bit more about what that looks like?
Well, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. While the government has made some commitments and provided resources in the first wave, the second and First Nations were very good in utilizing those resources to lock down their communities and in terms of following the public health guidelines. But now with the second wave that's potentially upon us, we have the numbers are rising, and so there's a need for more resources and the continuation of the resources so that we can respond adequately. I mean, many First Nations are without adequate housing, inadequate or deteriorating infrastructure, and they need safe drinking water. So they simply can't meet the public health guidelines without the tools and the capacity to do so. So I heard yesterday, I heard a story of a chief in Manitoba who tested positive and, considered sleeping in his truck to keep his family safe and because he had nowhere else to turn to, nowhere else to go. So, overcrowded housing without the ability to isolate is a real concern. And one of the communities in northern Alberta was also struggling with an outbreak. The chief reported that they have up to 30 people living in a 3-bedroom house. So these, we have to, First Nations need the resource to adequately deal with this and have alternative ways to keep their communities safe and places where they can self-isolate. And so it's and in terms of the infrastructure, I've also heard a story yesterday from northern Manitoba where the ambulance couldn't get to the community because the ice bridge was not safe, and so the community they were attempting to break the ice so that they can get a boat to go across, and but they did it was unsuccessful. The patient had died within that time frame. So, you know, those issues need to be looked at because you know, if this pandemic is you know, it reaches proportional numbers, then you know, First Nations are going to suffer deeply from because of the lack of resources and attention to you know, dealing with their issues adequately.
Thank you. I think that's really important. And I actually had a First Nations community from Alberta reach out to my office and ask not to be named, but asked me to ask this question, which is that they asked for about $250,000 to help with the pandemic support, and what they've received is only 50,000, and they're very concerned, not able to support their folks. I'm just wondering, is this a common occurrence in this area? And if you have any idea of other communities facing similar realities, who, like this community, are feeling very silenced because they don't want to publicly announce and be in trouble and lose more resources for their community.
Well, we have over 630 First Nations in Canada, and the funding that was provided in, you know, the first wave was approximately 650 million. And so, you know, you have to divvy that up, and you know, there's always the formula is the base and population. So the communities with the smaller populations, you know, get less of the resources, and you know, in order to deal with this pandemic in a good way, you need adequate resources. I mean, you know, 50,000 to you know, purchase PPE or you know, hire people to provide security for your community is just not enough. I mean, those resources run thin, and a lot of what's happening is even during the first wave, a lot of First Nations were utilizing their own source revenue, and you know, it's created a lot of issues because their resources are dwindling, and so now, you know, if they have to deal with this with increased numbers, you know, they're at a loss as to how to deal with it, and even in terms of the economic stimulus funding that was provided to the nations, I mean, they're suffering. It's just not enough. So First Nations need to be, like I said previously, need to be a priority so that they can deal with this pandemic adequately.
And you talked about that earlier in your statement to us, is that the communities need to be part of the economic recovery as well, and that you need to be included. Could you just talk a little bit about what inclusion looks like for you and what we're asking the federal government to step forward with?
Just a half a minute, Ms. Patras. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, First Nations need to be at the table when decisions are being made, and historically they haven't been at the table. So it's critical that they're part of the decision making that impact them, because First Nations are sovereign nations. They're working toward building their nationhood, so they have to be respected and included.
Thank you very much. And the next round of questioning will be with Mr. Viersen for 5 minutes, 2.5-minute questions from Madam Berube and Madam Blaney, Ms. Blaney, and then Mr. Van Couverden. So for 5 minutes, Mr. Viersen, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank the witnesses for being here today. Good to see you all, even if it's only on the Zoom meeting. And I also want to put in a plug for Alberta. It's not often I get to do this, but Alberta is the warmest province on average in the country currently, and I just want to needle that a little bit because I know that my colleagues from BC, they always want to do that as well.
Je m'excuse, je n'ai pas la traduction parce que mon collègue ne porte pas de casque.
I'm so sorry. So sorry. I hope this is better. Marlene, I just want to go a little bit around, talk a little bit about the recovery, economic recovery. A lot of the impacts on the economy have not been so much directly results from people being sick, but because of our response to the COVID. Just wondering if you have any stories of particular businesses from Northern Alberta that have been significantly affected because they haven't been able to operate due to COVID.
Thank you for the question. Many First Nations and all of Alberta, the businesses which are the backbone of most of the communities have lost significant resources due to the shutdown, and a lot of them are struggling to maintain operations, and so it's just an impact with all the communities. And so they want to know, with the second round, what economic stimulus supports are coming, especially for their own businesses as the pandemic rages on. Nations are using their own source revenue, and which are, like I said, which are running out. So help is needed now, immediately. There isn't time or capacity to apply to additional rounds of funding. People are getting ill and more are dying every day. So without immediate action and immediate results, the consequences will be even more dire and the spread of the virus will be out of control. But the businesses do provide a lot of the resources to their communities as well. With the first wave and the impacts of that, they are struggling right now.
Mr. Chartrand, just wondering if you've got any particular stories of First Métis companies that are particularly struggling at this time. I know initially at the beginning of COVID, I worked with a number of organizations that were Indigenous led that were looking to produce PPE and seemed to be unable to get government contracts for that. I know that many First Nations, you talked about the fiddlers. Many First Nations peoples are employed in hospitality, an industry that's been devastated. Just wondering what your thoughts are, and if you got a particular story for that. You're on mute, Mr. Cartran.
Got to get used to that. Let me first go back to your first question about Northern Alberta. The Métis, of course, communities in Northern Alberta are feeling really the hard hit on the pipeline closure, of course, and the length of time getting Trans Mountain back into perspective. And there's a great support, of course, on that economic venture, which had our Métis communities working hand in hand and creating long-term relationships and partnerships with the oil industry. So they're clearly being hit and they're feeling it now. And when you have matters like that, no disrespect to all of Alberta, clearly when you have that big elephant that actually is the one that gives you the key fundamental strengths economically, and that elephant's gone out of the room, there's really sometimes no industry coming right behind it to replace it. So they're feeling a hit right now, and we hope that the pipelines will get back into perspective and the oil will raise its prices up, because truly they're feeling the hit hard, and they felt it really hard during the first phase already, trying to get some support for ampers and so forth, which in fact the Federation gave them $100,000 from my province to assist them in Northern Alberta to get them into ensuring that the elders stay in their houses and that they can continue to find some ways of support. They lost their economic engine, and it's hurting. And no Métis businesses, I'll use my province as an example. We got over 500 businesses registered in our government, and we have a really robust plan. In the first phase, we gave all types of support. Federal Canada's program of $40,000, which is we call the Métis DIBA. I want to commend the federal government for that one, because it really gives a $40,000 loan to businesses, because we have many small, medium, and some large Métis businesses in our province, and a 10,000 forgivable grant. So we just announced yesterday 5.5 million for the Federation, 3.5 of that coming from Canada, and 2 million coming from us, to ensure that during the red zone, as you know, in Manitoba, we're in a worst case scenario right now than anybody else in this country, and actually worse than many United States particular states, was El Paso or Texas. When you look at different aspects of it, you see that we're really hurting bad. And now the closure of many businesses, nearly a complete shutdown here, we're fearful that they're not going to make it and come out of there bankrupt or finished. And
Okay,
so
we're right at time.
okay, thank you.
Sorry,
thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
We have 2.5 minutes now with Madame Bérubé with the block. Please go ahead, 2.5 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question will be for Mr. Obed. On your website, you put out a statement to thank the federal government for funding to help with COVID-19, but now we're in the second wave. Do you think that the funding has been adequate?
Thank you for the question. The funding has allowed Inuit communities to respond to COVID-19 considerations, but in the coming months, we are going to need um, different types of funding. As was discussed earlier, the economic fallout is severe within Inuit Nunagat. If you think about how many Inuit are artists who either sell art or perform, all of those scenarios, all of those opportunities have largely been lost. Also, any tourism opportunities, any of those seasons in any of our communities have come and gone with no season. So for our economy, it's definitely going to have some ripple effects over the winter. Also, we're going into a very different scenario from when we started the first wave. In the first wave, across Inuit Nunagat, we were able to help people get out on the land, to go outside of just the confined spaces of overcrowding housing and communities. And so many Inuit did that. During the coming 3 to 4 months, it'll be very, very different. And I think we'll need much more support and capacity for health services, for contact tracing, for the public health structures, and then also for economic and transportation stimulus.
Just a half a minute.
Est-ce que vous avez des...
Do you have any recommendations for us for our study?
As I said in my opening remarks, applying an Inuit Nunagat policy lens to any of the COVID-19 relief efforts goes a tremendously long way in ensuring that Inuit can benefit for anything that the federal government provides in support. A lot of our time over the summer was spent chasing terms and conditions for certain announcements that weren't made with First Nations, Inuit, and Métis specifically um, um, decided upon structures for the interventions. So all interventions that come from the federal government should have very specific terminology around First Nations, Inuit, and Métis, and then also for Inuit, applying Inuit Nunagat policy.
Thank you. Ms. Blaney, 2.5 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Obed, if I can come back to you, you talked about in your presentation to us the need for more data and having more ownership of that information. If you could just talk a little bit about what that would look like and what benefit that would bring to the community. I just think that that is something across Indigenous communities across Canada that is a continued concern.
Thanks for the question. The way in which we make the best possible decisions around COVID response is with data. Outside of Inuit Nunagat, we do not have any clear understanding of how many Inuit have contracted COVID-19, on the types of services that they've received, or very little else about their health condition. We have sizable populations now in cities like Edmonton, Winnipeg, Ottawa, Montreal, St. John's, Newfoundland, and we need to know better about how those populations are faring in order to provide services. So provinces and territories should collect and then report on Inuit specific data so as to then allow for Inuit to understand how to serve our populations better and for all public government to serve Inuit populations better. This is something that can happen right now. The forms that are filled out in relation to COVID-19 reporting do have ethnic identifiers within them, and it's imperative that all jurisdictions step up and help Indigenous peoples understand how to serve our populations.
Thank you. Another thing that you talked about earlier was housing. And I know that that has been a spectacular another disaster for a long time in Indigenous communities across Canada. And now with the pandemic on top of it, isolation, we've heard this from many communities. If you could just talk about some of the challenges that you're facing in your region and in the communities that you represent, that would be extremely helpful.
Just 30 seconds. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, the major considerations are following public health protocols. All of the messaging has reached our communities around how to prevent the spread of COVID-19. But if you have 12 people living in a 3-bedroom home, if you have people sleeping in shifts, if you have limited access to food and also to hygiene products, you're putting people in an impossible situation, and that is one of the biggest challenges that we face in keeping our population safe.
Thanks for meeting my time challenge too. I want to make sure everyone gets their full opportunity. And the next questioner is Adam Van Couverden, and this is a 5-minute question. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much to the witnesses for joining us today, for providing us with this incredibly valuable insight and perspective. My question is to all three, and I would like to go from Madame Poitras to Mr. Chartrand to President Natan Obed, if that's okay. And it's in two parts. The first, and I'm sorry, I'm going to ask for very brief answers. The first is around engagement with the officials to gather that really valuable insight and perspective and feedback about the individual problems that your communities and nations face and have faced. I'm wondering to the degree to which it's been adequate. I'd like to know that they've been in touch proactively and that you've had the opportunity to provide that. The second half of my question stems from something that Madame Poitras said around the case that there is room to be better. And that the COVID-19 epidemic has exposed other epidemics and inequities across Canada, from opioids addictions, tuberculosis, as Mr. Obed referred to, inactivity and sedentarism, I think, is a problem in many urban and suburban communities as well. Housing and overcrowding and clean drinking water just being a few of those. But we have a well-stated ambition of building back better, and I would like to know from a broad perspective what building back better means to you, your communities, your people, and your nations, starting with Madame Poitras. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. You know, in the first wave, we had a really good response from in terms of the engagement with this government, with Minister Miller. And but like I said, there's always room for improvement. And in terms of some of the decisions that are being made, like the recent release of funding, how the questions that we get is how do they arrive at those numbers, and taking into consideration that we have over 630 First Nations in Canada, and so it's like I said, it's imperative that we work together in dealing with this crisis, because in the past it hasn't happened. So we need that nation to nation engagement. So thank you.
Thank you, Madame Poitras. Over to Mr. Chartrand, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Adam. Let me say this: engagement to officials, sometimes that's a massive challenge, especially federally when I talk about FINIB. That department is again keeping an old policy that should be thrown out with the garbage a long time ago, because it has damaging effects to the Métis people in Western Canada. And so that's a big issue. When it comes to ministers, that's a different story. They're truly in line with discussions. They're willing to pick up the phone and talk to you and see how we can better align our systems. So that's a big difference when you see the politicians wanting to do a difference, and you see bureaucrats sometimes pulling back because of some policy that hinders them. On the other side of it, I think what all of us should learn from this is that one virus affected the world like that, the entire world, but it showed how this virus will attack those citizens that they will be the most in danger. Really, right away, it was the highest chronic illness individuals, and those usually would be the poor, the working poor, and the seniors, and general all seniors. So when you look at it from that context, our country and our world needed to reflect a quick action plan on all of it. But it also shows it can affect anybody in the world. So one virus, as I hope, give us a wake-up call in this country, wake-up call in the world that we need to do better. We need to be more effective. We need to now truly reflect that this is an issue and we need to be ready for it. So, but we do know the most vulnerable will be Indigenous people because of the highest chronic illnesses, because as Marilyn has said and as Natan has said, this is a long-standing issue of us struggling to find a place in Canada where health and costs are, everybody's afraid to deal with Indigenous because it costs so much money, but it costs so much money because they ignored it for so damn long. And now we're paying the price for it. So again, for all of us, I think this should give you a wake-up call. We need to put our heads together and sit down now and figure out, okay, how do we move after this? It could come, the next one could come out and could be worse. How do we plan this? And we shouldn't just say we're over it. Let's just keep on living. I think that's the worst thing we could ever do to ourselves.
Thank you, Mr. Chartrand.
Half a minute. Go ahead.
I think it's been interesting. Personal relationships matter a lot within the federal government, no matter what you might think about the idea of a bureaucracy. And so we have great relationships with departments like ESDC, Indigenous Services, Infrastructure Canada, Public Health Agency, Health Canada. And we have other departments where there could be major announcements and we get, we get nothing, such as in Agriculture Canada in relation to food security. Moving forward, I think building back better means recognizing infrastructure deficits and closing those deficits when it comes to healthcare and education, and also economic considerations to ensure that there is one country when it comes to connectivity, infrastructure, and a foundation for healthcare, education that allows for all of us to meet these pandemic realities in the same.
Thank you very much. We're now to another 5-minute round with Mr. Vidal. Gary, please go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I think our order would have Mr. Milello up next.
Apologize for that. Eric, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I'd like to direct my questions to Mr. Obed. And in my riding and across Northern Ontario, we've seen disruptions, reductions in air service to many communities, particularly the remote communities which depend on that air service for their prosperity. But many of the air carriers, of course, they've had difficulties accessing government programs for a variety of different reasons. And I'm curious to know if, Mr. Obed, if you've seen similar reductions in air service capacity in Nunavut, and if so, in your view, how has that impacted food security across the territory?
Thanks for the question. The reduction of air travel has been universal across Nunavut. There are many restrictions now for anybody to travel. There are 2-week quarantine isolation requirements for much of the 4 regions of Nunavut. And also then a lot of the planes that fly are small planes where it's very hard to be physically distant. And so the capacity to on these planes has been reduced as well. The end result is that there is a lot less opportunity for goods and services to flow, although through these goods and services contracts, these freight contracts, airlines have been able to keep going because of some of those very real realities where communities need freight to be flowing day in and day out. Also the consideration around testing, and if you have been tested but then the flight doesn't come for 3 days, that has a massive implication on the ability for public health to understand how to respond to particular cases. I think the sustainability issue is one that we really have to try to address in the long term, especially if this goes on for a lot longer, because we have different companies and airlines that have serviced the remote regions of this country against all odds for a long time. But this particular reality, I think that there needs to be subsidies to consider that these are essential services, and we need to keep these infrastructure structures in place. There are no ways to get to our communities for the vast majority of the year other than through the air. And that's just a reality for all of the services that we need during this pandemic. And I do hope that the federal government thinks of air transportation first when it comes to infrastructure in regards to COVID response.
Absolutely, thank you very much. And just to sort of go back to the second part about the food security, we know that food security, maybe food insecurity is a better way to put it, across the territories is a challenge at the best of times. How has the pandemic impacted some of those challenges? If you can maybe just expand on that a little bit more.
Yes, sorry about that. There have been some unexpected positive consequences of the pandemic, and one is that more people have been on the land in the last 6 to 8 months, and so therefore have been providing more to the community for country food than generally in the most recent history. There still is a huge reliance on perishable and non-perishable food items that are flown in or cargoed in, sea lifted in. And so for this year, many people would have gone to the South, gathered non-perishable food items, and then put them on sea lift, and they would have them then for the entire year. And that sea lift season really didn't happen. There were some people that were able to find other alternative ways, but for the most part, we're going into a winter where there will be more of an emphasis on store-bought foods and less of a stockpile, if you will, that individuals have to ensure that they have food security. So it remains to be seen. We haven't seen massive influxes of food insecurity based on the airlines operating differently, although we have seen delays in perishable items. But because the system still has held to this date, we have not seen a wholesale collapse of the way in which non-perishable food items get to our communities. But that is a risk. And if we don't do more to support our airlines, then these systems will become in peril and people will suffer from food insecurity.
Thank you very much. That brings us to time, and time for 5 minutes with Marcus Pawlowski. Please go ahead. 5 minutes.
Thank you. Welcome to all the guests. Seems MPs from Northwestern Ontario are a dime a dozen today. There's myself and Eric. So the communities, the Indigenous communities in Northwestern Ontario have, I think, done pretty well with the pandemic and haven't been that affected by them. I think they've done a really good job. But certainly one of the concerns, I think, is the dependence on healthcare referral centers in more southern places. Now, in Northwestern Ontario, that isn't such a problem because Thunder Bay is on the receiving end, and Thunder Bay doesn't have a lot of COVID cases either. However, Manitoba used to be really good, but now places like I worked in Norway House before as a doctor, we used to refer all our cases, including pregnant women, to Winnipeg, which is obviously potentially a big problem now. Similarly, with Mr. Obed, I worked in Iqaluit, and more complicated medical cases there went either to Montreal or to Ottawa. So again, a big concern in possible source of transmission when people come back from health services. So one, the question was, what are you doing to ensure that you don't get transmission that way? Just getting people to self-isolate for a couple of weeks? Is there enforcement of that? Have you considered possibly changing referral centers? So instead of sending people from Iqaluit to Montreal, you send them to somewhere which has a lower number of cases. And then I guess the other concern is, okay, people who are sick have to go to those places, but also say you're in Norway House and you've been having chest pains, you want to get a stress test. Well, people may not want to go to Winnipeg given the the concern about COVID in Winnipeg. Similarly, if someone needs a colonoscopy from, I guess Iqaluit, they can do them, but if there are other kinds of testing that have to be sent down. So I would think that's a kind of concern, is that we're not picking up cases early enough because of people not wanting to go to the referral centers. I leave it to anybody who wants to answer those questions.
If I do, you don't mind, Marcus, let me start off in Manitoba. Of course, you know, in red and orange, and we're definitely in one hell of a crisis here right now, and it's a scary place to be right now. We're 97 capacity in our hospitals province wide. There's just no way that anybody could take anybody right now. There's and over 200 physicians and doctors and experts have warned warned province that that they should never have sat down and rested and take it that we're in good shape or get everybody else is in bad shape. We're good. There should have been a strategy, and that strategy was not there. So now we're paying the price for it. It's obviously a lesson to be learned, and we go back and reflect upon it. But we are very, very, very fearful of it right now. We don't know where we can go if something does come, if the pandemic hits our villages and our Métis villages, for example, or you use Norrie House example, you know that, and Métis is next door to them also. And if they get hit hard out there, it's hell to pay. There's nowhere to go. Their hospital, they have a small facility there that'll be fully utilized completely. I think they're still building their hospital. But if you look at it general terms, you're absolutely right. Anywhere in the north, south, nobody wants to come to Winnipeg, but you can't anyway. Nobody's going to take you. And if you're sick, if you're in ICU for an heart operation or something, you're in big trouble because they're delaying now surgeries. So we're in a very, very dangerous zone right now in our province. Sometimes I shouldn't be critical, but our government failed miserably on this one, and it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt. It's costing lives. So we've never seen that 80 death yesterday altogether already. So it's just rapidly increasing. Like I say, we're the worst than anybody else in this country, and I don't know how we're going to find ourselves when the dust finally settles here, when we get some kind of control. But I'm very thankful as a Métis leader. We have a very strong communication system. And as I said, we delivered over 6,000 hampers last year to keep all of our elders inside their houses. And we're doing it again right now. We're full swing right across the province. And we're trying to make sure that our young generation, that's another one that all of us in this country need to focus on, to tell the young generation they too have a responsibility to be carrying the value of their grandparents, their parents, that yes, they're strong. Yes, they may survive this COVID, but just imagine for a second we keep on doing our communication strategy. Imagine for a second you give it to your grandpa, your grandma, your uncle, your aunt, and they die. What are you going to carry on your shoulders for the rest of your life? So we try to scare them on that because it's real. It's not trying to make it up. It is real. And so we have a very good, robust communication strategy, and numbers are showing that our communication strategy is working. So I think as I said, it wasn't for Federal Canada right now. For us, we'd be in hell of big trouble in our province as a Métis Nation, and I think Indigenous people in general. So again, I cross my fingers. I'm a religious man. I pray at night and I pray in the morning. So I do pray that we're going to find our way out of this mess, and because this is a scary one right now for us in Manitoba.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chartrand. Mr. Vidal, I have you up next for a 5-minute round. Are you ready to go?
I am, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much. I also want to thank all of our witnesses, as everybody else has today, for your time. I know it's valuable, and your input and remarks are appreciated by all of us. I want my question to be fairly quick because I want all three of you to have the opportunity to answer this. So I'm going to do this quite quickly. First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people have, from the beginning of the pandemic, acted very quickly to ensure the safety of your people. You've done a great job of that. I want to commend you for that. On August 12th, the second round of the Community Support Fund was announced. And just yesterday, it was announced that the application process is going to be open for a little better than half of that money, where the other half of the money is going to be allocated directly to First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. I would just like your comment on any concerns or any value that you would see in the application process, which isn't going to close till November 30th, and then the associated decision on who's going to get that money based on. I'm guessing there's going to be plenty of application for the amount of money included. So just the timing and the process and how you feel about that and how it's impacting the people you represent.
Ms. Poitras, do you want to start with that?
Sure, that's great. Yep.
Sure. Thank you very much. Yeah, that when I seen that, the 160 million was open to application, it I was concerned about it because there's some First Nations that don't have the capacity at their level to, write really good proposals, and they're going to be left out again. So, and like I said previously, First Nations need the resources, but they need them now because this pandemic is rising and it's creating great concern. So, to institute a application process takes time, and there's a big delay in terms of the services that are provided. So it's a concern for me.
Thank you, Vice President Chartier or President Obed, whichever wants to jump in first here.
And thank you again for that question, Mr. Vidal. From our perspective, as I said, I do commend the federal government on this action. And if there's lessons to be learned here, this is a good one. It is working. The ministers are stepping in behind the scenes and they're making clear that even though the policies that are being written, and for example, the application process, if it's too cumbersome, they're making revisions to them to make it clear that it finds its way to our government so we can get it to our citizens. So I do commend the government on that part of it. That they're doing an excellent job on that side of it for the Métis Nation. So I have no complaints coming from our side, and I think any political party, if you follow that pathway of a distinct-based approach where it's measurable and accountable, a transparency is there. That, for example, the Métis Nation, the First Nation, Inuit, as you heard Nathan say, all of us directly get our own share of the funding, then we can divvy it up to our systems and let our governments decide what's best for our community. And it's really working, Mr. Vidal. And I think it's a good example for anybody. And maybe because you guys pressure a lot to make sure that this money gets to us, it's working. So it's working in many ways right now, and we're very appreciative of that.
Yeah, I agree with President Chartier. In second round of Community Support Fund, we would have preferred that more of that portion would have gone directly through in the way in which the first allocation of funding did, which was through self-determination processes between First Nations and representatives. I think the challenge for the second round is one of access. I also think that through my conversations with the Prime Minister and with Minister Miller, they've always said that this is what we're doing at this point in time. So they've always reassured us that there would be more money to meet need if the need is identified. And so I am still hopeful that that still is something that we can see as a principle moving forward, that even if this second round is in two different pots, that there is more money for the identified need as the need becomes.
You have a half a minute left, Gary.
Thank you. Maybe just quickly, a number of you referred to the 5% Indigenous procurement and some of the challenges for your businesses. Could maybe Regional Chief Patra just comment on the challenges of not meeting those targets of Indigenous procurement and the impact it has on your businesses?
I'll speak to the issue of casinos in Alberta, for example. They have the First Nations Development Fund, and First Nations, all First Nations in Alberta were able to access those funds. But now, because of the shutdown, and they had to close down a lot of casinos, now they're struggling, to maintain the operation to the level that they did prior to the shutdown. So they require the extra stimulus, and when they announce funds for the economic recovery, First Nations get significantly less than what's provided to the provinces for economic stimulus, and that's a problem.
Thanks for your short answer, because we're moving along to a 2.5 minute question. Madam Beyroube, 2.5 minutes, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is as follows. Mr. Obed, when we talk about the tests, and you were talking about rapid testing, and that hadn't yet come into effect as quickly as possible, what do you think would be necessary to make that happen?
We continue to have ongoing conversations with Health Canada, the Public Health Agency, Indigenous Services, and the 4 public governments that service Inuit communities around testing. We have a structure called the Inuit Public Health Task Group, where Chief Medical Officers of Health sit beside senior technical leaders from the Inuit regions. So we have a partnership already. We have a way in which to talk about how to strategically align the Inuit specific considerations and the public government considerations. We still aren't at a place yet where there are, number one, the rapid access testing protocols that have been approved by the Government of Canada and by jurisdictions to employ in Nunavut. But when we do, it will be a matter of access. And as we've seen with every different stage in this pandemic globally, when there is an intervention, there's always not enough of it based on the population in need. And so we have been continuing to lobby for Inuit Nunavut to be considered a special consideration and a high priority for things like rapid access testing technology to be employed by the Government of Canada. And then also that goes down to the vaccine as well. So right now, the biggest consideration is access to these types of rapid access solutions. Also access to the lab testing that's required in the South. We have very little capacity, if no capacity, depending upon the region, to have lab-analyzed results for COVID tests. So we're just behind when it comes to every aspect of testing and identification of COVID. And we have been very fortunate so far that we don't have high rates of COVID in our communities. But if that changes, we need to solve these outstanding challenges in regards to access to testing.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Blaney, 2.5 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you. And if I could start by asking Mr. Obed, I'm going to ask everybody the same question, but if you could start, the transition to remote education has been a bumpy one for everyone. I'm just wondering if you could speak to some challenges that you have faced in terms of access to internet, but also access to key equipment like computers and whatnot.
The access to connectivity is one that is particularly acute during COVID. The ability to hold Zoom meetings or Microsoft Teams meetings, any sort of meetings. We had our AGM and board meeting last week at ITK. We had certain people that couldn't participate because the connection wasn't strong enough or reliable enough. So if you have meetings just staggering along and waiting for people to get back online, or you can't hear them for certain periods of time, that's just the reality of our connectivity. And we are not able to conduct business, we're not able to conduct healthcare or education in the way in which we need to, and in the way in which Southern Canada can, because of the lack of connectivity. Moving forward, we need a Inuit Nunavut solution. There are many different solutions that are being proposed, which might help one region or another. But as the Government of Canada has said, there will be universal broadband connectivity by, I believe, 2030. And we need to be on the forefront of that as well. We've always been a number of generations behind when it comes to connectivity in Inuit Nunavut. And the reliance on satellite technology for the entirety of our bandwidth is not acceptable.
Thank you. Madame Potra?
30 seconds.
Thank you. I think one of the biggest concerns, I guess, that I've heard in terms of remote education is the childcare aspects of work, especially working mothers, and it creates a lot of issues. Other than the connectivity and the access to the technology to provide good quality education. So that those are some of the concerns that I've heard. And, as we move forward, I know in Alberta, they've opened up some of the schools, and, with the rising cases in COVID, that's that's been an issue. So because parents had to apply by a certain date to be able to provide remote education to their children. So it's creating some issues.
So we'll have to stop there. We have one more 5-minute question from Ms. Zan. Lenore, please go ahead. You'll close it up with 5 minutes. Go.
Okay. Sorry. There. Sorry. Took me a while to unmute. Thank you so much to everybody for your very intelligent and impassioned comments and presentations. I've been listening really intently. One of the things that's concerning me, and I'm sure it's concerning you too, is the twin pandemic of overdoses and addictions, and the rising deaths that by our young people, middle-aged people, many people who are are getting this the disease. It's a disease, and it's very concerning. So the pandemic has cast a really grim light on the ongoing crisis that we've been facing in Canada for many years, the overdose epidemic. But I notice while some cities have significantly higher number of overdose deaths than others, the need for harm reduction services and calls from advocates for a safe drug supply is continuing to rise across the country. And also, I noticed that there's an increased risk of deaths and overdoses if the substance supply shifts, and especially if newly contaminated substance, including fentanyl or its analogs, are introduced into the communities. So what exactly are your communities doing to prevent or to counterbalance this rise in activity? Madam Poitras, would you mind going first, please?
Thank you for your question. And yeah, the mental health concerns have been a real issue that has been dealt with, not only with the increase in suicides and overdoses, but also in domestic abuse, and even having safe places for the women and their children to go to. That's an issue. And some of the things that we've tried to do is have our elders, because they're a very important part of our fabric in society and our ceremonies. But like I said, those things have been scaled back because of COVID. So
right.
And then some of the issues ways that they've tried to deal with them is to go online, to have counseling services or somebody to talk to. But the issue, of course, is of people not having, the technology to be able to do that, like from elders to, young people. So it continues to be a concern. And I think that the way that we need to deal with it is all of us come to put our heads together and address these issues in a good way, because it's going to, now with the numbers that are rising, we have COVID fatigue, and people are just like, well, yeah, I'm positive. And, one of the things I hear is that people are recovering from it. So I'm just going to go out and continue to party or do whatever. So those are issues that we're dealing with. And those are very, really concerning issues. And I don't think it's only in the First Nations,
No,
the Indigenous,
yeah.
it's everybody. So,
Yeah.
so we all have to come to the table to deal with it effectively.
Certainly. Mr. Obed, do you know if the naloxone kits are available widely, or what's happening on that end of things?
I'm sorry, I don't have a specific response in relation to that question. I was going to, and I can get you that information along with the other promised information to the committee. In relation to harm reduction and safe drug supply, in our Inuit Nunagat communities, we just don't have the resources for a lot of those types of facilities to exist. And there are a lot of challenges that come from not having harm reduction principles being employed within our homeland. But for urban Inuit and for Inuit who are at risk, who are homeless or on the streets in many cases, there needs to be more support for urban Inuit organizations and for First Nations, Inuit, and Métis specific organizations that provide support at the community level across Southern Canada. They do amazing work with almost no resources, and there needs to be more support for those institutions.
I agree.
We're right past our time now, and
Sorry, Mr. Chartrand.
Mr. Chartrand, though, you did make some very pointed comments on this subject earlier on, which captured by, of course, our analysts and as part of our testimony. I also hope that all of our guests, who we deeply enjoyed having, could hear the respectful tone of our committee's questions, which reflects on the concern that we have for the work that we're doing for the people under our charge, the way this committee is mandated. We feel it's very important. It should be beyond partisan politics, and I hope that that feeling came across, because we're pretty proud of the work that we're doing, but of course we're not proud of the outcomes yet. We need to fix that. Now, just before I let you go, I'm going to ask the clerk to advise the committee on what we need to do to get into the last few minutes of the meeting, which is committee business in camera. Mr. Clerk, what's the process now?
We'll suspend the meeting, which will end this Zoom meeting, and you'll use the information provided to you in email to connect to the in-camera portion. So it's a new meeting info and new password.
Okay, does everyone have that? Thank you. For just a few minutes now, this meeting is suspended.
Thank you.